we should be starting off our conference. This conference is a special one. We're going to have Andrew talk about blockchain and education and how that's going to relate into what he's doing on blockchain and in Decentraland in general. Please introduce Andrew and make him feel welcome with a dance and a clap, and let him know, he's welcome in Decentraland.
All right. I'm assuming you can all hear me now, so I want to start. So these slides, I've been talking about blockchain-based education and blockchain-based games separately for a while. This is kind of the first time talking about them together. So you'll see the slides, I've kind of pulled them from previous presentations. So some of the graphics might say ESL coin or whatever, but my words are going to be pretty general to the concept as I'm talking today. So we could start with the next slide. I'm going to give a brief introduction here. There we go. Now, next slide. So some people I realize might not be familiar with the ESL industry, might not know what I'm talking about. It's a part of the education industry. That's what got me interested in what James is doing with his university. We've been looking at ways to use blockchain for language education because my friends and I have a lot of experience in that field. But here's some numbers. You can see it's actually a huge industry, right? If we can capture that within Decentraland, that could be quite valuable. English is just economically valuable, especially in export-oriented economies. It's a lot of money to be had, but I'm not going to rail on about it. Next slide. So me, I started as just an English tutor a long time ago on Meetup and stuff. It's lately I started trying to combine those two things, right? Like if I'm into blockchain and I'm into teaching, maybe we can do them together. Now at first I had a lot of students in my network, and I used to go around trying to get bars and clubs and stuff accepting Bitcoin. Like we'd have meetup events and whatnot. We don't do that as much anymore. Like merchant adoption isn't the fad it used to be. Now it's all about smart contracts and games. But we still do it. Like just today, we signed up a convenience store to accept Bitcoin. So yeah, that's my background. Next slide. Briefly about the landscape here. Like education is, like universities and stuff are often kind of officious, right? They don't want to necessarily work with a bunch of anarchists like us, especially if they got some public funding, like if they're a public university or whatever. So we've actually put a lot of time and thought into the regulatory landscape that we're facing as we approach it. We based our operation, or the ESL language operation, out of Canada, which politically and regulatory speaking is wise, in my opinion. And the people here are down with that kind of thing. So we'll see, I think, education starting to be accepted institutionally. They'll start getting wary, they'll start getting how it works. Next slide. You guys probably don't need this one as much. I presented to English teachers in the past, but, basically, in my view on the blockchain, it's all about storing information, securing information, information which might be disputed. And we can apply that to all kinds of different things. And now you're going to see what types of academic information might be disputed. This is what we're going to start getting into, right? How can we apply blockchain to this? So we'll go next slide. Yeah, just keep going through. This one's obvious. You can, in the ESL industry particularly, because of the global nature of it, I have students in Pakistan, India, all over Africa, and just all over the place, man. Especially in our WhatsApp chat room and some of our Facebook pages and stuff. Especially if you think about it, right? If you're a student who can afford to come to Canada, you're already here. There's a lot of students still back there in their home countries who want to talk to English speakers. and get that. So they do it remotely. And that requires payment remotely. You're typically crossing vast distances and multiple political borders. And then blockchain payment, obviously, you can see the use case there, right? Um, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. We'll just go on to the next slide. IDs and reputations. This is where we're getting into, like, for academics, it's grades, right? We need to know, well, not just the reputation of the student, but of the teacher, who cheats, who's good at their job, what schools. I had a friend, Sean Chatton, who's been working with us at ESL Coin. He had the idea to map who gets what jobs after they leave the school. Your identity, when tied to your academic record, it's actually quite valuable, particularly because currently they do this via centralized methods, which incur fees and time. There's another slide, maybe just continue, or I can describe some processes. Yeah, like this. Back in the day, when I switched university, I mean, I'm a dropout. I never completed, but I switched around, and when you switch universities, back in the day, we had to use a paper system. They actually like stamped my transcript with like ink and put it in an envelope and mailed it to a place in a process that took several weeks and cost me money. And they have to do this because you cannot trust a student to be honest about his grade. Like, if you ask me, Andrew, tell me what grades you got, I'm going to say, I got straight A's, obviously. I'm so smart. And we can't just trust the student to be honest. So a public record of grades can be quite valuable in this regard. We would no longer need to pay these central testing bodies. Right now, when you want to send your test score to a school, you pay like $30 a lot of the time. You've got to pay to send your test score to a school. It's ridiculous. Why not just give them your address and they can look it up on the blockchain? And if you want to keep your grades private, don't give them your address. That's the beauty of pseudonymity. There's concerns like maybe you don't want everyone to know your grades. There's ways you could encrypt them on chain. There's ways to maintain your privacy while maintaining control, and not incurring such unnecessary steps and just moving your information around. Yeah. Next slide. Oh, this was another idea I had. So we have a big meetup group in Vancouver. Like, our meetup has over 10,000 members. There's a lot of us. We actually meet at the Waves Coffee House, where they put the world's first Bitcoin ATM. And we still meet there. And one problem is, like, 100 students will show up wanting to talk to Canadians, and no Canadians will show up. Canadians all want to go get drunk on the Granville Strip and hang out with their friends and like do God knows what Canadians are doing. So, I started to, how do I get more local Canadians to come to the meetup so that they can practice their accent with real organic speakers of the language? And then I started thinking about microtransactions. It might be neat, right? Like, I can't give everyone $1. $1's too much to pay you just to show up for a meetup. We could send you a couple cents maybe, and with the small fees allowed in blockchain payment systems, we can start to consider such things. We could keep track of how much you're interacting with others, let them rate your responses. Obviously, we don't want you to just sit there swearing at them and talking nonsense and try to get your incentivization for that. But ultimately, long term, I think we can use this to incentivize good, get people to do things for their community without forcing them to, because it's in their best interest to do so. Let's see, it's next slide. Oh, this was another one we thought. You guys have probably seen the Babel fish. You've heard of Babel talk. Where like you go on an online translator and you put your sentence through and it comes out looking kind of like what you thought it said when you first typed it in, but slightly weird. And then if you translate it again, back to English again, it just looks nuts. Like automatic translators make mistakes. 'Cause humans detect nuances and idiomatic expressions that the AI often misses. So we thought, maybe we could leverage the crowd. And again, we can't pay you $1 to say, yes, that sentence is correct. I mean, come on, that's not hard to do. A couple cents, though, maybe. We need small incentives for small tasks. And in the large, I think this could produce very accurate translations. I mean, by definition, it's accurate if people understand it. If the crowd says they know what it's saying, then that's a good translation then, right? See at our next slide. Oh, this was one, we've been looking at different blockchain platforms that we can do this on. One we looked at previously was Decent. I don't know if you've heard of those guys. It was like they were mixing torrenting with blockchain, kind of like you can do peer-to-peer file transmission. So basically, if you want to send someone a textbook or a worksheet or whatever, it's done through the peer-to-peer network rather than a central server from which you download it. It's kind of neat. It allows all kinds of incentives, and it allows control, right? The blockchain says, I authored that book. And you don't want someone like stealing your worksheet or stealing your idiom, or maybe you put some work into your little graphic drawing. On the blockchain, you can timestamp it. I did it first, and you can prove someone a liar. Um, that's the idea there. Go to the next slide. Oh, this is getting kind of nerdy, like getting into database talks. Like, the ESL industry is very, very prone to middlemen. That's a good summary, especially because think about it. The consumers and producers, the students and the teachers come from different countries. They speak different languages. The middle is the Pacific Ocean. You have a lot of room to be a middleman in the ESL industry. And so it comes that people monopolize and profit greatly off of connecting students to teachers and schools. If all of these people were recorded in a decentralized database, then they could be matched automatically. And we wouldn't have to incur such fees to a central authority just for the privilege of connecting a student to a teacher. They would be connected uh, to the best match the blockchain can find based on what criteria they need: age, location, skill level. It can be quite valuable. Go to next slide. All right, yeah, this is the nerdy one. We're getting really into ESL teachers like to record all of your text. And I've thought about that. For privacy reasons, we might not like that. Like if we do it in the chat room, now, I might set up a separate app for something, but so basically they try to set up ways of recording as much language as they can because they analyze it. Basically, they just analyze the language to try to construct the ability to teach an AI to do that. So they need as much language as possible. And it's actually quite valuable to them. But everyone wants it. I don't want them to know I said that. It might be more interesting if we had a pseudonymous system where we could know a person said a thing, but the public couldn't know which person said that thing. They could just know that some person did say that thing, but not which person. And, we're getting into methods of collecting data without violating privacy, like particular to ESL nuances. I don't know. I'll just go on to the next slide. Yeah, this is like, we have a separate system that we've been working on. To be honest, this might take us a couple of years because it's a regulatory process. We wanted to launch a utility token in Canada, which they have a particular hoops they make us jump through, which we're still doing. But if you're curious about that, or like if you're involved in language education, let me know, reach out. We'll talk about it. We'll just go to the next slide for now. Here we go. Yeah, one more. See, so I've been trying to think of things we can do in Decentraland with this. I've had a couple thoughts. In Decentraland, it needs to be interactive. And part of the beauty I realized is that it's more difficult to pirate interactive content. With decent system, we could say I own it on the blockchain, but once you download it, you can do as you please. Interactive gaming content is streamed, which from the teacher's point of view is quite valuable. And here, this is my idea for a lab to help people practice tongue twisters. And it's kind of a game, right? In Decentraland, we want it to be kind of fun, kind of lighthearted. So it's to be structured in that sense, and simple. In each cubicle, you have 3 tables, and there's a listening table, a speaking table, and a reading table. So the monitor shows you the tongue twister. Oh God, I don't want to speak a tongue twister right now. She sells seashells, like one of those. It says it on the screen with a pretty graphic image. And then if you press the playback button, our teacher, we're going to record our teacher's voice. And again, this is all long-term stuff. Some of this stuff can't be done in Decentraland yet, or is more difficult to do than I'd like it to be. This is, I'm thinking long-term here. Now, we could have our teacher's voice pre-recorded and played back. So, if you're looking at the seashells, she sells idiom, for example, pressing the button causes audio of our teacher speaking it to sound in the game. And then we'd have a recording option, let each student record their attempt, because they're trying to practice. They want to be able to say the twister properly. And that's considered success from the point of the game and their learning. They're often practicing their accent more than their vocabulary, actually. And that's very important. So you can see we just, if we had it set here like that, as long as we had the content, it could run on its own for people to play with for a while. I think it would be a lot of fun. We've already created idioms for it as well, but yeah, and we've drawn out some math. Like, see the next slide? Yeah. Oh, this is another one. We have an idea for an exam room. This might be fun, right? Doing an exam in Decentraland. I don't want it to be too digitized. Like if we just provided a terminal and you press to interact with the terminal and everything from there, you might as well do that on your computer outside Decentraland. So instead, I thought it would be fun if it's multiple choice, that you have to actually have 4 buttons that can be pressed and interacted with. Interact E, press the button corresponding to the answer choice you think is correct. And we can quiz people this way. We would do it. I've set it up. I've defined time intervals, so like there's a pattern, it gives them a reading passage, and then it gives them questions in succession after that. The idea is just to be able to do it. We want to be able to test people, but it has to be a game and kind of communal. So we've been, yeah, and again, it's going to take a while. So the first steps of this, obviously, it's easier to make non-interactive stuff in Decentraland. So I would imagine, we might have a computer up showing idioms, not that soon, but before we have this whole thing up and running, if that makes sense. And because in the long term, we'd like to be able to record everyone's answers for posterity. Like any university records the academics of students, it would be good to be able to record people's accuracy response, maybe just for themselves, or maybe just, I don't know if we're yet soon going to be at the stage where like you show your Decentraland diploma and employers are impressed. You know what I mean? Like I have a straight A's in Decentraland, but we do want it to get to that kind of point eventually. So we need a record system, but that's going to take a while. I think we're running out of slides. Try the next slide. Pretty much it. What do you guys think? Any questions? I can't see the chat room. I'm on my phone.
Am I on? Yeah, there are some questions. I think, what do you find the difference between, say, a solution that Decentraland, specifically Decentraland, can offer, being based on a decentralized platform, and obviously having in-game transactions and stuff like that? Do you find, what are the main differences do you find, like an online platform like Decentraland can offer that, say, something like Second Life or any other projects that you may have looked at can't offer? Or what do you feel the main differences would be?
The main advantage over one like Second Life would be copyright protection, which honestly, I go to ESL conferences, and like every industry has its own conference. So does the ESL industry. There's whole publishers out there who are upset about they're losing. Some of them are getting really hurt, especially because they publish in parts of the world where infrastructure is worse and piracy is more common. People will just print out a worksheet. Like once you download it, you can print it out. Can't stop that. In Decentraland, they have more ability to protect their. I mean, now I'm sounding kind of like I don't know if that's good for students, but the teachers are gonna like it. For students, it's easier to access, and it's an interesting world, right? Second Life is also. I haven't played much myself. I was more into Eve Online, World of Warcraft, stuff like that. But they are on a central server still at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, someone could go to their office and threaten it. And, I'm into blockchain gaming as much as I am into education. We do blockchaingaming.com. I want a game such that if someone went to the developer's office and threatened to kill them for my property, they couldn't give it away. Too bad. That's what I want. And you don't have that with Second Life. We're still not quite Decentraland's looking at distribution options with its servers, right? It's still getting there, but it's trying to get there, and that's important to me.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really cool to see the benefits of what Decentraland could be at the moment, because obviously it's not a polished product today. Like, there's still things and features being released on the monthly, and that unlocks a lot more to be able to be done with the platform. Another question would be, do you find your students to be aware of blockchain or crypto, or do you find that there's another educational process there before you can obviously start using a platform like Decentraland? Decentraland, obviously, there's a MetaMask barrier there. There's the barrier of letting them understand to receive mana token, to maybe buy an avatar name, and all those issues that come with onboarding. Do you find that needs to be is that a larger process, or do you feel that they're more receptive to something like that?
There is some process to that, yeah, man. I want to make sure it's very seamless. Like, one of like our WhatsApp chat room and our Facebook page is over 22,000 followers. It's a huge casual audience, and so I don't want to scare them, if that makes sense. But a lot of them are more savvy than you might suspect, especially because if you're in our remote community, like if you're an ESL student who's from another place, often you live in a place where Bitcoin's valuable, like Venezuela, Nigeria, India, places where the remittance aspect of it is valuable or even necessary. We get a lot of students from areas like that, honestly.